Thank you for watching Scary Animal Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the deepest heart of Siberia, to the Yakutia province in Russia. A small town located on the shores of the Yana River, Verkhoyansk, was founded in 1638 as a fort and has apparently not grown much since, with a population of only 1,309 people today. It is noted for its bitterly cold temperatures. January averages minus 56 degrees Fahrenheit and is surpassed only by areas of Antarctica. The geography includes tundra, and the soil is permafrost, meaning that the ground is perpetually frozen, in some places several hundred feet deep. It is a mountainous terrain with wide plateaus covered with Dahurian larch, dwarf birch, with spruce and pine mixed in. There is very little precipitation here, and the predominant industries are mining and timber. The wildlife of the area include moose, brown and polar bear, Manchurian, northern, and musk deer, as well as bighorn sheep. Oh, and wolves. In this bleak environment, wolves feed mostly on hares and other small animals when they cannot get deer and moose, but recently hare populations have been falling due to the extreme cold. Near Verkhoyansk, the local wolf population got very desperate in the winter of 2012. Typically, wolves pack up to about 6 individuals, but in times of desperation can form larger packs to pursue larger game. These particular wolves are called gray wolves and are of the subspecies occidentalis. In the U.S., we have the more diminutive timber wolf of the subspecies eremotus. The gray wolf is the stuff of lore, inspiring tales such as Little Red Riding Hood and many others. These wolves have a larger brain than the domestic dog and are said to not only be clever and cunning, but also very intelligent. 2012 was an extraordinary year to say the least. A super pack of wolves, numbering around 400 individuals, has beset the edge of town. This giant wolf pack has killed and eaten 6 children while they were walking home from school. The area livestock have been pursued and eaten at alarming numbers as well. In just 4 days, the wolves have killed 30 horses that belong to residents. The local ranchers raise reindeer, as they are easier to raise than livestock. And the wolves have reportedly eaten 16,000 reindeer. In total, they killed 300 horses in 2012. The regional authority, known as a president, Yegor Borisov, put together a plan to eliminate the wolves to prevent any further loss of human life and livestock. He authorized the formation of 24 teams of hunters and trappers offering $250 bounty per wolf hide and a larger prize sum for the hunter who brought in the most hides. The area usually has between 3,000 and 4,000 wolves scattered in small packs across the tundra, but this super pack is wiping out every bit of wildlife and livestock it comes across. It has the numbers to pursue any animal to exhaustion, and continually kills and immediately kills again. In the days of the Soviet Union, Stalin exiled political dissidents or enemies to Verkhoyansk, and the area became known as Stalin's death ring. Today, the small town is in short supply of manpower to fight the super packs, but started hunting wolves from helicopters and airplanes when the seasonal daylight returned. The goal was to reduce wolf populations to 500 individuals, but it was unsuccessful. The problems of late arose when the government banned the use of leg-hold traps, which are one of the most successful ways to trap the elusive wolves. Once the traps were banned, wolf populations increased dramatically, and they overburdened their normal food supplies. This is not the only alarming incident involving wolves in Russia. In World War I in 1916, while the Russian and German armies were fighting in western Russia, they were attacked by packs of starving wolves. The wolves initially attacked the wounded and dying soldiers. Then they began to attack the rearguard soldiers who would simply disappear and were thought of as to have gone AWOL. The wolves even became so bold that they would charge into battles and attack wounded soldiers during the battle. The fighting amongst the armies temporarily stopped to fight off the packs. Once around 100 wolves were killed, the packs fled, and fighting resumed. Thank you for watching this episode, and make sure to be careful because you don't want to end up on an episode of Scary Animal Attacks. Welcome back to Scary Animal Attacks. Today's episode takes us out to the great frozen north of the Canadian province of Saskatchewan, to a uranium mine named Points North Landing. The climate of this area is a continental climate, which means that winters are extremely cold and summers are warm and sunny. The terrain is a rolling combination of prairie and boreal forest, so there is a mixture of grasses and deciduous trees scattered throughout. Wildlife abounds with diversity that includes caribou, moose, black bears, and wolves, in addition to the normal variety of ground-dwelling creatures like fox, squirrels, and songbirds. There are abundant water sources, with nearly 10% of the province being covered in lakes, rivers, streams, and reservoirs, and agriculture is very productive in the south. Most of the human populations live in the southern portion of the provinces, so the north is sparsely populated, and humans that are there are frequently working in mining, timber, or the energy industry. This is exactly what brought Kenton Joel Carnegie, a 22-year-old college student from the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. He was studying geological engineering and on an internship at the service center for a nearby uranium mine about 350 kilometers from La Ronge. In the late afternoon, around 5:30 p.m. on November 8th of 2005, Kenton wanted to go out for a walk around the edges of the camp. He had to get permission to do this and was warned not to go, especially alone, but he was not easily deterred as he enjoyed a little adventure now and then. He indicated to a work cohort that he would be back by supper time at 7 p.m. He left the buildings behind and trekked across the open field outside of town as twilight began to settle in. The cold air chilled his nose and cheeks as he labored through the snow and appreciated the solitude and peace once he was about a kilometer away from camp and walking along the shore of a lake. An approaching tree line beckoned to him, and he crunched to the edge of it. The trees in the area are predominantly black spruce and short, but tend to grow thicker and closer together than larger trees. Just as he reached the tree line, he glanced up and noticed an observer. It was a wolf, just a few meters ahead of him, and it was standing broadside to him. The wolf didn't seem anxious, but Kenton had seen wolves in the area, and they weren't pleasant. Nearby wolves and black bears frequented the camp dump and were aggressive and unafraid of people. They would sometimes approach people growling and demanding, as animals who are accustomed to human-provided food sources tend to become. Kenton decided he would not press his luck and chose to turn around and head back to camp. As he began to turn around, he noticed a second wolf appear over his back trail. This wolf was positioned between him and his most direct route back to camp. His level of concern began to rise. Little did he know that the wolves had been tracking him ever since he left the camp. One had followed in his boot tracks like a bloodhound, and the other had paralleled his travel route, concealed by the trees. Kenton had unknowingly walked into an ambush. With darkness setting in, Kenton increasingly wanted to be back at the safety of camp and started to panic. He made the worst choice he could have. He decided to run. He tried to run in a semicircle around the wolf between him and his camp, back through the trees a bit. As he struggled to make the dash back to camp, the two wolves were joined in the pursuit by two more wolves, one from each side of him. Apex predators do not like to attack an animal that is looking at them, because they know the animal may see them and defend itself and harm them. Wolves in particular like to flush their prey, using their speed to close in on the vulnerable rear portion of the prey animal, and that's exactly what they did to Kenton. As his strides lengthened to navigate the snow as quickly as he could go, the wolves closed in and bit into his thigh just a few strides into the chase. Blood began to spatter the snow as the wolves tore his flesh, and he rolled on the ground trying to avoid their vicious teeth. Kenton struggled to free himself and kicked and yelled as the pack encircled him. One of the wolves clamped onto the calf muscle of his right leg, and another bit into his right hand. He broke out once again and ran a few more meters before being caught a second time and brought down to the ground. He again kicked and hit and yelled at the wolves, who were taking turns leaping in for attacks at his legs and anything else they could sink their teeth into. As he fought them, his blood pooled below him in the snow. Kenton broke free a third time and ran a few more meters toward the camp, only to be caught again. He was now very terrified and realized he had to fight for his life. Kenton kicked and stomped the wolves, only to be attacked from behind by another wolf and tumbling to the snow. He would turn to attack that wolf, and another would run in from behind to attack him from his blind side. His blood continued to pool and drip into the snow. Kenton broke loose once again and tried to separate himself from the now frenzied wolf pack. They quickly overcame him yet again, and this time he was out of breath and tiring from adrenaline and blood loss. A wolf attacked him and bit his nose, tearing the tissues and sending pain searing through his body. He had several bites all over his legs, arms, face, and hands at this point, and was continually being attacked from the rear no matter which direction he turned. With his feet set wide apart, he stood his ground defiantly as his blood covered the snow and vegetation beneath him. As he turned to kick one of the wolves, he lost his footing and fell to the ground. All four wolves converged on him at that point and bit and tore his flesh until he quit moving. Back at camp, Kenton's coworkers noticed he was not back at dinner time. By 7:30 p.m., they jumped into a camp pickup truck and went down to the lake to look for him. Upon arriving at the shore, the men saw the wolf track and returned to the camp for a rifle. When they came back to the lake, the men located Kenton's remains a short distance away using a flashlight. There were no wolves around it, but it was surrounded by wolf tracks in the snow. A short distance away from them, the impromptu rescue team could hear wolves howling. The men went back to camp to get a group of people together to document the attack and recover Kenton's body. As they returned to the kill site, they could see two sets of eyes glowing in the dark as they worked on loading Kenton's remains. An investigation was opened, and much of the track evidence was disrupted by the search and recovery efforts. Since none of the men had been an eyewitness, the coroner concluded that Kenton had died from fatal injuries inflicted during a predatory attack, but stopped just short of confirming it as a wolf attack. Black bears had not been seen for over a month in the area, and would be hibernating at this point of the year. Coyotes nor mountain lions had been seen, nor had been known to frequent the area. That only leaves wolves, and given the amount of wolf tracks in the area and the known population around camp, that leaves only one culprit. The authorities opened the investigation up to a jury, and the jury agreed that Kenton's death was caused by a predatory wolf attack. Experts indicated that even though Kenton's death was a terrible tragedy, a single human death was no cause for alarm. Kenton's parents created a memorial scholarship in honor of Kenton at Waterloo University and expressed concern that authorities were overlooking more significant policy problems. They pointed out that biologists at the camp had failed to notice the wolf pack's dependence on human food sources and had caused them to lose their fear of humans. An electric fence was erected around the camp's dump to keep bears and wolves out. Several years later, a young man was mauled by a lone wolf as he took a break outside only 100 meters from camp. He survived, and authorities ordered nearby wolves shot and food disposal systems be installed at the camp to prevent further enticement. Prior to Carnegie's death, there had only been one confirmed case of fatal wolf attack in all of North America. Carnegie was returned for internment at Thornton Cemetery in Oshawa, Ontario. Thank you for watching Scary Animal Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the frozen woods of southwest Finland. This nation has a very low population and consists of flat forested plains covered by pine and fir trees. In fact, 70% of Finland is forest to this day. Finland also has 187,888 lakes. The wildlife in the area include brown bear, elk or moose, wolverine, lynx, and reindeer in the north, and wolves. The subarctic climate of Finland makes living tough, and today there are only 5.5 million Finns, but at the time of our topic, there were only 2 million Finns in the 1880s. At that time, the economy was an agrarian economy, which means most people raised their own food on family farms. In this setting, we understand our episode today. In the nation of Finland between 1710 and 1881, there were up to 265 attacks on children. Wolves in Finland were learning to hunt vulnerable humans in times they couldn't find game easily. In the year 1880 is when the statistics began to change for the worse. There were 22 reported deaths at the teeth of wolves that year, and the attacks were all centered around the woods north of a town called Turku. The first incident involved two young brothers who were enjoying themselves in the sauna on January 15th of 1880. From their family farm near Velua, the brothers witnessed a lone wolf emerge from the woods nearby and cross their potato field. The wolf then hops the fence and attacks the 8-year-old brother, Kalle. It drags the one brother off into the woods as the other brother runs to get his parents. The boy's mother summoned a rescue party, and they followed the blood trail in the snow. About 500 meters down the blood trail, the rescue party finds Kalle's right leg torn from his body just below the buttocks. A little further down the blood trail were the boy's clothes. The boy's mother finds more parts of her son and carries them tucked into her dress. The surrounding areas organize wolf hunts and increase bounties for wolves, but none of it is successful. The wolves escape all efforts to capture or kill them. About 3 months later, on April 23rd of 1880, near the village of Viikinen, 2.5-year-old Johanna Wieck is playing in the yard of her rural home. Her mother hears her yell, "Mama!" so her mother runs to see what's going on. Just outside the front door, she finds Johanna's severed foot. Her daughter and anything else are missing from her yard. Near the edge of her yard, she finds wolf tracks leading into the adjacent woods. The baby's body is never found. Her family held a memorial for her 2 days later. On the day of Johanna's memorial service, April 25th, 1880, 3 siblings are walking home from school. The 12-year-old brother picks his 5-year-old sister up and begins to run with her, but his 7-year-old sister lags behind slightly. They're very close to their home, and just as they're about to get to safety, a wolf snatches 7-year-old Maria Matilda in its jaws and runs toward the nearby woods. When the adults are alerted and they begin searching, they only find her shoe and her skirt. No sign, body parts, remnants, nor corpse of the little girl are ever discovered. The area around Turku is alerted and on guard for the appearance of the wolves. The very next day, and a few miles down the road, on April 26, 1880, 2.5-year-old Maria Helene goes outside to fill the water bucket from a spring near her home. After some time passes, her parents go searching for her and find only a few drops of blood and the discarded water bucket. The neighbors search for the little girl, but no trace of her is ever found. Residents of the area immediately suspect the rampaging wolves. For the next 3 weeks, there were no known or reported wolf fatalities, but on May 25th, events changed for the worse. The Latvala kids are playing in the front yard of their family cabin. The 3-year-old daughter, named Amanda, doesn't notice what the other kids described as a big dog approaching. The wolf bites the little girl by the neck and shakes her until she's dead. The other children run to get her mother and tell her that a big dog took her. A search party gathers, and the only thing they find are the little girl's intestines near her shoes, with her feet still inside. The regional government begins urging citizens to kill any wolf on sight. This leads to 6 wolf pups being killed by hunters and bounty hunters, but the child-killing wolf is still on the loose. Nearly 11 weeks later, on August 3rd of the same year, the village of Nihitula had a frightening occurrence. 2 young girls were herding cattle along a remote road in the woods when a wolf appears from nowhere. As her friend is frozen in fear, 10-year-old Anna Lindberg is savaged and killed by the wolf. Anna's friend runs away and escapes by herself. Events went quiet for almost 2 months, until October 6th of 1880. Near the village of Taatila, a wolf attacks 4-year-old Ida Tuominen. The wolf carries her body off a distance before the girl's father finds her and recovers her body for burial. The very next day, on October 7th of 1880, near Kovero village, 5.5-year-old Serafia Granfors was snatched from the woods near her home. The villagers search for her body for 2 days, but are unable to find it. This attack was incredibly 43 miles from the prior day's attack. Near the village of Maajarvi, about a week later on October 15th, 5.5-year-old Polly Grunrus is playing in the forest a short distance from his mud hut he shares with his widowed mother. When he's returning to his hut, a large wolf appears and begins chasing him. The boy runs toward a narrow strip of land that crosses Maajarvi Lake, and that is where the wolf overtakes him and kills him. It drags his body away and consumes all but his foot and head, which are found later by searchers. About a week later, and near the village of Kirla, on October 22nd, 9-year-old Ida Lakso is leading a group of her classmates down the road as they walk home. A wolf suddenly appears and jumps over surrounding fences as it rapidly approaches the group of schoolchildren. It immediately focuses on Ida and bites her and drags her into a snowbank. It attempts to grab her by the neck and shake her to death the way it had previously done to other children. But Ida is wearing a very thick shawl. The wolf can't get a grip on her neck with its jaws. Ida reports that the wolf would press its ear to her chest during the attack to see if she was still breathing, apparently. If she moved or breathed, the wolf would start attacking her again. After a few times this happened, she decided to play dead. It was then that the wolf tried to drag her off into the forest. Ida's thick clothing presents such a problem for the wolf that it continually drops the girl. A man named Jane Makila scares the wolf off by yelling and hissing at it. The wolf is distracted and outnumbered and decides to run back into the woods. When Ida tries to stand up, she falls back to the ground. The wolf has broken her leg, so Yanni carries her back to her mother. Ida lives another 80 years and has scars on her face and body, along with her improperly healed leg, as a remembrance of the wolf attack. The local government in Turku decides to set poisons out to kill the wolves. They also hand out rifles and solicit the services of professional hunters to help eliminate the murderous wolves. Just 6 days after this incident, on October 28th, near the village of Kalanumi, over 33 miles away, 9-year-old Juho Laiho is attacked but is not killed during the attack. He survives to describe the beast and spread his experience. There are no further wolf attacks for this year, but there have been 9 fatal wolf attacks on children in the prior year. Professional hunters pursue the wolves all winter long, but are outsmarted and unsuccessful. As it turns out, it is several months until another attack. On May 14, 1881, near the village of Kaitoinen, 6-year-old Johanni Wahatalo was helping with chores by chopping some wood near his family home. His mother glances out the window to see a wolf attacking him and immediately runs around to her son, but by the time she arrives, the wolf has carried off her young son. Neighbors form a rescue party and track the wolf several miles, but only to recover part of the boy's body. The young man's pants are found during the search. The next day on May 15th, 12 miles from the prior attack and near a remote area called Kajärla, 4-year-old Matilda Heikkila sneaks outside to play in the yard. She is immediately attacked and dragged into the woods. Only her skull is ever recovered. Around 3 weeks later, on June 10th, near Saksala village, 9-year-old Mauritius Lipeweha was told to get his horse from the meadow near the forest. A female wolf attacks the young man and quickly kills him. 2 men were in the area and scared the wolf off to recover the boy's body. They take his body back to his family. Almost 3 weeks after the last attack, on June 29th, near the village of Nihetula, 5-year-old Gustav Victor is enjoying a sauna with his daddy. His father just concluded a hard day's work and thought it would be fun to relax with the family in the sauna, so they went. Gustav, being the little man he was, couldn't handle the heat long and stepped out of the sauna. It is only about 25 yards back to the house, so he heads back by himself. Gustav doesn't make it the short distance home, and a search is launched for him. His body is discovered cached in a swamp for consumption later. Due to the close concentration of the attacks, villagers believe the wolves must have pups nearby to feed. Only a few weeks later, on July 15th, near the village of Paistenoha, 7-year-old Johan Velavereha was out in a field near his uncle's farm in the broad daylight at 6 p.m. His parents watch a wolf quickly run up to their son and attack him, then run back into the woods with him. They chase after their son and the wolf and soon find his foot, still inside his shoe. A search party later finds his body cached in a nearby swamp. Slightly over a week later, near the settlement of Karhalean, on July 22nd, 8-year-old Gustav Hardman heads out berry picking with his little brother. Right in front of his brother, a female wolf appears and attacks Gustav and kills him. She then drags his body away and caches it in the swamp, as before. Fortunately, his little brother is not injured and survives to pass on the tragedy to their parents. Only 10 days later, on July 31st, Lavamaki village, 2-year-old Konrad Aderman was playing in his yard. His older sisters and brothers are watching him from the window, and they witness a wolf coming toward their house from the road. The wolf hops the fence with ease and grabs Konrad in his jaws, and then jumps back over the fence with the young boy and disappears into the woods. Just 4 days later, on August 3rd, near Petsalo village, 8-year-old Matilda Savin is leading her family herd of cattle with her 10-year-old sister. They are going through a forest when a wolf suddenly attacks her and kills her. The wolf carries her body off and partially consumes the remains. Her father finds her remains. About 2 weeks later, on August 15th, near the village of Kajärla, 4-year-old Gustav Nummelin is being watched by his mother as he plays in the yard. She witnesses a wolf approach, attack, and kill her son, then leave with his body before she can do anything to stop it. A little over a mile away, after a 2-day search, rescuers find little Gustav's body cached by the wolf for later consumption. Almost a month later, on September 10th, near the village of Luta, 7-year-old Karl Forstrom is herding the family cattle. Karl sees a wolf approaching and tries to intimidate the wolf by climbing onto a large rock and waving his arms and yelling. The wolf approaches the boy and kills him. It then runs off with his body, which is later recovered, mangled, near the edge of the woods. Around 3 weeks later, on October 1st, near the village of Kukola, 8-year-old Karl Sentala defied his parents' orders to stay in the house while they were at work. He walks a short 60 yards to the well to get some drinking water. He never returns, and searchers later find his bloodied clothes and some of his bones. On October 6th, government officials meet to establish a committee to look into the wolf attacks. Nearly an entire month passes with no reported attacks, but on October 31st, near the village of Koyanmaki, 6-year-old Christina Johansson is returning home just after sunset. Her mother watches her approach the yard and enter the gate. Christina opens the door to the house and is attacked from behind by a wolf before she can enter. She is knocked to the ground and the wolf drags her into the woods. There were 2 pups waiting there, and they consumed much of Christina's body. Her incomplete remains were found later and brought back for burial. Just over 1 week later, on November 7th, near Ekaisten village, 5-year-old Karl Grunrus was playing with his friend on the family farm. A wolf suddenly appears and begins attacking the boys. Carl's friend squirms under a fence to safety, but Carl is attacked by the wolf and killed. The wolf runs off with his body and caches it in the water in a ditch just under a mile away. A hunting party was finally organized by the government, and professional hunters were planning a hunt for the wolves by November 19, 1881. They decided on a focused hunt commencing on December 10th. On January 2, 1882, a very large and old female wolf was killed. Her teeth are worn down, her coat was long and shaggy, and had faded to a yellow color. About 2 weeks later, on January 14th, a wolf believed to be her mate was killed by a local hunter. By the end of the wolf hunt, 12 wolves are killed in the area, but all attacks on humans have ended after this male and female were killed. The villagers kept the hides of the wolves to display them and warn others in the future of the dangers. Eventually, the artifacts were lost to history and forgotten. Over the next several decades, wolf eradication was made a priority in most of Scandinavia, and wolves were all but wiped out in Finland. In 1973, they became a protected species, and only reindeer ranchers in northern Finland were allowed to shoot them to protect their herds. Wolf numbers have slowly grown back to just over 250 individuals, but nowhere near what they were 100 years ago. Along with this recovery in numbers, reported incidents of wolves encroaching into cities or biting people are on the rise. Cases have gone from 0 for decades to about 1 per year now. Is this a harbinger of the fatal wolf attacks on Turku occurring again in Finland? Post your answers in the comments below. Why do you think the female wolf was attacking children? Was the government reacting quickly enough to the crisis? Was the female teaching a new hunting technique to her pups? Would that technique be passed on to future generations had they not been shot?